on Army. He has consistently piloted and influenced the kind of work that we do. I want to thank you very much, Honorable, for finding time to join us. And also in the room is Honorable Babajimi Benson, the Chairman, House Committee on Defense, a very dynamic member of the House, and of course, an influencer in this conversation. And I want to welcome you, sir, for also joining us this morning, for this afternoon. And I also want to thank Honorable Edem for also joining us this afternoon. And of course, we expect Honorable Shehu Mohammed Koko, who is the House Committee Chair on Air Force. He had given us his commitment to join. And of course, we are hoping that Honorable Yusuf Adamu Gagdi would also be joining us in a very short while. So without much ado and without wasting too much of our time, I think it would be nice that we delve straight into the subject matter for this afternoon. So I will request the Executive Director of CISLAC in the person of Malam Awal Ibrahim Musa Rafsanjani to please welcome our very respected Honorable to this particular event. Edie, I will pass the buck over to you so that you can formally do us a welcome. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Salau. Let me first and foremost want to express our gratitude to the honorable members, particularly Honorable Committee Chair of Army, who have been very consistent in actually attending and supporting and partnering with CISLAC. I am most delighted that other members of the Parliament or the legislature are also here, and to also thank our partner who, without their support, we will not be able to even hold this meeting. Dr. Tunde, I would like to personally express our appreciation for the continued partnership with CISLAC. Let me also thank other participants in this very important webinar that we have. So I would like to start by saying that I welcome you all to this very important, retreat, bringing together legislators within the civic space to underpin the protection of civilians in the armed conflict as a critical element of our work. This must remain a constant preoccupation with those in this meeting and as well as other stakeholders. Since the end of the military rule in 1999, Nigeria has enjoyed uninterrupted civilian rule. However, the nation has also had its fair share of challenges consisting of internal health, multiple civilian arrests, militancy, and insurgency. Some have generated into situations requiring military intervention and solutions that may be termed non-international armed conflict. In the course of applying military force to quell or to control some of the situation, civilians have suffered loss of life, properties, and some name for life. And with this, it will seem that the civilian population is not guaranteed of protection in such unfortunate instances. The most ineffective way to restore security and deliberately combat violence extremism is to put the protection of civilians at the heart of Nigeria's military operation. If the military protects civilians from Boko Haram, works to ensure its own operation to combat Boko Haram did not harm civilians and create a scared environment, the cycle of violence can be broken. In the process, the military will also gain the trust and support of affected communities. After all, if communities feel victimized by security forces, they are likely to obstruct their operation or even support the insurgents, as we have seen in some instances, even in Maiduguri. In most conflicts or other situations of violence, civilians suffer the consequences of a wide range of abuses and violations that are committed on varying scale. Some might be isolated instances and other part of the consistent trend. It is therefore essential to have a policy that responds to civilian harm mitigation in Nigeria and to ensure a real follow-up in the middle of long term for some difficult issues. No effective protection strategy can be conceived without a sound understanding of the violation abuses that were committed. Those include the rationale, their direct and indirect effects, and social and legal framework in which they took place. We are happy that the Chairman House Committee on Army is leading this process in the National Assembly, and we encourage him to see this through. We also urge him to influence his colleagues to buy into this agenda and leave the legacy of their efforts in the Ninth Assembly. I know that like I said, without the support of our partner, we will not be able to succeed in the work that we are doing, trying to even promote the policy and even popularize the issue. So the support that we have been getting from partners had really, encouraged or has really deepened the work that we are doing, which I believe that we will have a long way to go without their contribution in this process. So I would like to once again thank our partner for providing the necessary support to continue to have this robust engagement. But more importantly, I think the attention that we have from the National Assembly, would invariably they are the ones who have the responsibility to legislate, to oversight, and even provide funds for all this work to happen. I think it is very encouraging to see that the National Assembly is really out there in trying to ensure that civilians are supported. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edie. Sorry for that little snack. Thank you very much, Edie, for officially welcoming us. So very quickly, I would also want to mention here that this meeting is actually supported by the EU. And of course, we are doing this in collaboration with the Center for Civilians in Conflict, just so that at least we have that on record also. So very quickly, may I request the Secretariat to just flag just that copy of the PowerPoint so that we can actually set the context for this meeting. And also want to recognize additional members of the House that are also coming in. We thank you very much for your time. So we would mention everybody and acknowledge everybody individually towards the end, so that at least we do it all at a time. So Secretariat, if you can, please quickly flag the PowerPoint so that I can set the context and of course hand the ball over to Mr. Tunde Oje, who has the real content to lead us through what has happened in the last few months. So very quickly, can we share the screen so that at least everybody can follow through the presentation? Secretariat, can you please share the screen, please? Okay, just a moment. I think I'll just have to do it for my own end. Okay. All right, so this is just the agenda. And of course, like I said earlier, this is just going to take us about an hour. So the moment we are done with the conversation from the beginning, after Mr. Tunde Oje must have provided us with that update, we will take panel discussants and of course, the Honorable Abdrazak Namdas, Honorable Shehu Koko, Honorable Yusuf, and of course, Honorable Abaji will provide us some very quick thoughts from what they believe. But very quickly, let me just mention that what we are doing here this morning requires a number of efforts, and it is not strange that we as civilians and of course parliamentarians are putting heads together to discuss issues of issues of civilian oversight. And it is necessary to do this because we need a framework in place to be able to ascertain the kinds of gains that we record in terms of how Nigerian armed forces respond to various theaters of operations. Let me say that in the last 5 years, there has been 40 different military operations across the country. And of course, it is actually an issue that calls for concern on how the parliament also begins to provide some level of oversight on the number of casualties that we record in these instances periodically. And of course, in a short while, I am also going to show how much of a casualty we will have recorded only in June. But to say that protection in itself can be a very Herculean task, particularly in the situation that we find ourselves, considering the fact that it is not a conventional warfare, and because it is not, it makes it slightly difficult from what we know and we are accustomed to. But the issue here is that we need to consistently rub minds and build mutual capacity on how we can actually begin to provide oversight to conventional armed forces in terms of their tactical, their operational, their strategy, and concept of operations that would have at the back of its mind or at the center of it human rights and of course the recognition of civilian authority. To also mention that there is always the issue of lack of clarity and common understanding about the issue of protection of civilians and how to achieve this. And this is because in a number of occasions, like I have rightly said, there's been quite a number of challenges as to how to separate the target from who the civilians are. And that is because, of course, non-state armed conflict is such that it is difficult to be able to delineate those who are particularly the target or those who are threats to armed forces themselves. But of course, there has been consistent global practice, and there are quite a number of opportunities and lessons that we can learn, replicate, adopt, and of course adapt them to suit our own context. And the question that might readily come to mind is to say what exactly would be the benefit of having a policy like this in place to be able to also form part of the framework for the parliament to also interrogate and ask questions around. And I think we'll find that in the next slide. If we go to the next slide, we would find that having a protection policy at the center of the entire operations does a number of things. One is that it improves on the rules of engagement that the military also design. So at the design stage of any theater, they also have that at the back of their mind. And the second thing is that it develops into some sort of civil-military relations. So it strengthens civil-military relations, and it also bridges trust deficit that we have actually noticed in the kinds of work that has happened in the last 1 decade. And of course, it strengthens the kinds of oversight that the parliament would also begin to ask to say, why are we having increased number of casualties of civilians, even of personnel? But because of this particular instance, we are particularly concerned about how civilians can also be protected. And of course, the issue of intelligence-led operations. When intelligence-led operations is actually achieved, it does a number of things. One is that it saves the country a lot of money. And of course, it provides some kind of time bound to theaters. We cannot have an endless operation. I mean, in the Northeast, we have had operations going on for years. Schools are mostly under siege. We find marketplaces, civil spaces are being militarized, and this has happened for so long. And the danger here is that when we have children that are given birth to in the last 10 years in that region, they begin to see it as a normal space for you to have a militarized environment, and this in itself is something that calls for serious concern. So we're able to save money and put time, we're able to also set time bound, in most of these operations. And of course, I just flagged what has happened in June and the number of casualties that we have also recorded. And if you look at this very carefully, it actually provided a geographical spread, and of course, provide the number of civilians and security force officers that have been affected by number of conflict. The challenge and the question here is to ask how much of oversight and intervention, and how many of these situations also are occasioned by military response. It is not to say that the military is always not willing to support, but sometimes, even in an attempt to help, some harm and some more damages are being carried out. So in all of these, it is an opportunity for us to be able to also design strategic focus areas in ensuring that we have a policy in place and a regime that will help to coordinate the kinds of casualty that we record in various military operations. So these are just the little thoughts that I want to stir before I hand the baton over to Mr. Tunde Oje, who is the country director for CIVIC, and I'm sure very quickly he would also provide us with some insights, and then we can open the floor to our honorable parliamentarians who are here to also share their thoughts on this. So having said that, Mr. Tunde, I will pass the baton over to you, and of course, please, you can take it from me at this point. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to express our appreciation to the Honorable Chairman of the relevant committees regarding this, especially for your commitment at this time. I know how challenging it is with the restrictions, and of course having to be on online meetings. It can really be a challenge, and I just want to say a big thank you to you, and also to my brother Rafsanjani and CISLAC for supporting this this course and getting into it with us and really pulling everybody along. I just want to say a big thank you for that. In order not to bore you with a lot of details about the policy, I would like to take it in a couple of steps. The first one will be to tell you what CIVIC is. To a lot of people, when you say you work for CIVIC, they think, oh, you work for Honda. It's not really Honda, it's the Center for Civilians in Conflict. I'll tell you briefly what we do at CIVIC, then tell you a bit about what the POC policy, what the protection of civilians is all about, and then give you a kind of stepwise information on the process so far. And then at the end, I'll probably be asking you a few, I'll be making a few requests to you, which I think Rafsanjani has already started on. And of course, Salahuddin, I just want to commend you for that presentation. I almost said we're done with the webinar. That was very eloquently done. Thank you very much for that. So the Center for Civilians in Conflicts, our mission is actually to work with armed actors and civilians in conflict to develop and implement solutions to prevent, mitigate, and respond to civilian harm. And we have our vision is that in a world where parties to armed conflict recognize the dignity and rights of civilians to prevent civilian harm, protect the civilians caught in the conflict from harm, and to amend the harm. We do this through a series of trainings with security forces. So we have a good relationship with security forces in Nigeria, where we're actually implementing training on protection of civilians in the institutions, and also at the brigade level, particularly the 7th Division in my degree. And we also do a lot of studies, research studies that actually strengthen knowledge and understanding of protection issues. And we have a good standing within the UN Security Council corridors, where we're able to influence relevant protection of civilian policies and actions. And of course, in terms of presence, we've been in Nigeria since 2016, and we're also present in a lot of other countries, like in Belgium, where we're engaging with the EU, and also the US, Ukraine, Afghanistan, just to name a few countries. And we also have a peacekeeping program where we're actually working in DRC, CAR, and South Sudan. That said, we all know that threats to civilians during conflict, it manifests in many forms. The concept of protection of civilians seeks to address the threats by mitigating harm, facilitating access to basic needs, and contributing to establishing a safe and secure environment. Having this focus in security force operations will inform the military planning and conduct of operations. So if you're now taking a step back to think of what a POC policy is, it is the protection of civilians, either persons, objects, and services. It encompasses all efforts made to avoid, minimize, and mitigate the negative effects on civilians arising from military operations on the civilian population. And when applicable, to protect civilians from conflict-related physical violence or threats of violence by other actors, including through the establishment of a safe and secured environment. As we all know, the conflict in the Northeast is in its 11th year, going to its 12th year. As of 2019, an estimated 7.1 million people were in need of assistance, including 2 million people displaced by the conflict. While stories of various forms of protection issues have been associated with this asymmetric warfare on all sides, earlier in 2015, CIVIC did a study of the Northeast conflict with the title, "When You Can't See the Enemy, Civilians Become the Enemy." This study actually led to CIVIC's interest to explore ways of addressing the suffering of civilians as a result of this conflict. So in 2016, I think it was in November 2016, CIVIC held a series of roundtable discussions with stakeholders, and the Defense Headquarters, in partnership with CIVIC, organized a high-level dialogue on protection of civilians in conflict. And it was at this dialogue that the first draft of the protection of civilians was actually developed. So it came as a request from actually the Defense Headquarters that Nigeria should come up with a kind of framework that brings together all the relevant actions that actually protect civilians and sort of bring out the best practices that can actually be incorporated in the kind of framework. And so this journey that we're talking about today started way back in 2016. In 2017, CIVIC engaged with the National Human Rights Commission and organized a press conference to brief the media and brought in the CSOs into the picture to kind of look at the draft policy that had been developed and to look at how we can actually make it more domesticated, if I should put it that way. Now, between 2007 and 2018, June 2018, a lot of underground engagements were going on, but nothing really happened. And so in June 2018, CIVIC organized a validation of the policy in partnership with the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. And in October 2018, myself and the executive secretary of the National Human Rights Commission actually briefed the Interministerial Committee on the Northeast about the policy. So that was the first time we actually briefed. The vice president was there, and we briefed him about the policy. And then that same October 2008, with the National Human Rights Commission, we had what we call the validation of the POC policy, where we had representation from the Defense Headquarters, the relevant security forces headquarters, and we also had the Ministry of Justice, who are actually the champions of the policy at the Federal Executive Council. And we also had CSOs, and we had commissioners for justice from the Bay States. So they were also present, and other key stakeholders. That process was aimed at further fine-tuning the draft policy to fit in the current realities in Nigeria. Now, in January 2019, of course, we put the policy to the Minister, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, who accepted to take it forward to the Federal Executive Council. So in January 2019, we submitted it was submitted by the Minister of Justice to the 8th Republic Federal Executive Council. But of course, the elections and of course, transitioning to the 9th Republic, it was not addressed at that Federal Executive Council in 2019. And in May 2019, the draft policy was resubmitted to the 9th Republic Federal Executive Council. And then in that same month of May 2019, myself, we actually briefed the Vice President again about the policy. And we also held series of meetings with various stakeholders to talk about their roles within the policy and how we can actually make it, how you can see the light of the day. Now, in 2019, December, the policy, from what we were told, was put on the agenda for Federal Executive Council again. But the Minister of Justice, who is supposed to be the champion of the policy, was not available at that meeting. And so it was not discussed. So since December 2019 till date, with all the COVID issues coming up, it hasn't come up again at the Federal Executive Council. And we feel there is a need for us to reawaken that, to make sure that it's discussed. Now, as I said earlier, I don't want to bore you with the contents, but I have like 5 key features that I would like to mention that makes this a very relevant framework for Nigeria to actually consider. The first is that apart from making Nigeria the very first country in Africa to have this policy that underlines its commitment to civilian protection, the policy recognizes and builds upon best practices already in place. Those practices include approaches that are working in the Northeast to address the crisis and improve the humanitarian situation. So it's not completely new. It warehouses all the best practices that are already being used by the security forces, and also brings about learning and experience from other climes where things are working okay and trying to contextualize it to our local situation. The second, and in a similar vein, is that this policy recognizes and builds upon existing laws. It is consistent with obligations outlined in domestic law, international law treaties, and constitutional principles. For example, the National Security Strategy. All of this is incorporated in this policy that we're talking about. Thirdly, it recognizes that to be effective, we must be consistent. We must be consistent across the government. Under the policy, all Nigerian security operations will prioritize the safety and security of civilians and endeavor to minimize the negative effects of conflict on civilian population. So it recognizes that in a military operation mandate, there will be some casualties, but the idea is to try and put in place things that would actually minimize the effects of that. Fourthly, it recognizes that civilians must not be forgotten. To the contrary, the policy affirms this government's commitment to ensuring the protection of civilians throughout the planning and conduct of all security operations, as well as protecting civilians from actions of other armed actors. Because a lot of times people say, oh, this is not conventional warfare, it's asymmetric. So part of this recognizes that and tries to promote actions that would actually ensure that regardless, the protection of civilians is prioritized. Finally, the policy, while ambitious, is achievable. The steps outlined are very clear and grounded in reality. As we've seen in progress here in Nigeria and in unfortunate but applicable examples from other parts of the world, there are proven techniques in promoting the protection of civilians. Those techniques include training of security forces, informed planning of operations, developing a civilian harm mitigation strategy, teams to track civilian harm during and after operations, and incorporating post-harm acknowledgements and assistance to impacted communities. So I think one of the things that will be helpful is after this dialogue, maybe Salahuddin, the Secretariat, can share the draft policy. But all these 5 features, sorry, my network is acting up here. So all these 5 features are, hello? Sorry, I keep getting muted, I don't know why. So all these 5 features are what makes this policy very unique. And it's actually, like I said, achievable, though it might seem ambitious, but it's something that would actually, like Salahuddin also said earlier on, that would actually build a stronger civil-military relationship and also increase the trust that civilians have in the security forces' ability to protect them. Now, our ask of you, sirs, is for you to act as champions of this policy in your respective committees and promote civilian protection-driven actions in the operation of your respective committees and by default, the security forces that you are in charge of, and to put your full weight behind this policy and support its realization at the Federal Executive Council. And finally, consider relevant aspects of the policy for eventual legislation. Thank you very much for your time.
File from my OD.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Tunde, for providing us, for bringing us up to speed with what has happened. And of course, I am sure that honorable members in the House now have more information into what has happened related to this policy and what is possible in terms of policy and legislation. Like I have always said, it would be good to push this agenda in twofold. On the one side, using policy approach, and the second side, looking at the possibility of a legislation that can also further institutionalize the issue of protection of civilians in our own country. And today I had already said that this will be the first of its kind in Africa. And I think the Ninth Assembly stands a chance to actually write their name in gold if they have to put these things to go through. So on that note, I will quickly open the panel discussion. And first of all, without any particular order, and of course, I will not be breaching protocol doing that, but of course, just ensuring that I run through this based on the list in front of me. First request Honorable Namdas to take the first shot, and then of course we can take that to the Honorable Baba Jimmy, who is the House Committee Chair on Defense, to also follow this too. If that is allowed, Honorable Namdas, I will just pass the buck over to you to please take your 5 minutes of fame. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving us this platform and this opportunity to actually participate in this discussion. I want to thank also CISLAC and the Center for Civilians Conflict for giving us this opportunity. I can tell you very seriously that we in the legislature, we have benefited handsomely from your interventions, from your programs, and we are always going to be there for you. Now to go straight, I want to say that this topic is really very, 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 very interesting to us, particularly legislators, because we are aware that thousands of people have been killed, particularly civilians. And we are also aware that about 2.5 million people have right now been displaced. The 7.1 million the earlier speaker spoke about, I think it has already been overrun, because that was about some years back. Now we have about 10 million in need of humanitarian assistance. And I can tell you, for a country of about 200 million, and they tell you that we have 10 million people now that are in need of humanitarian assistance. And out of this 10 million, 1.2 live in Boko Haram or difficult terrain where even humanitarian services is difficult to access. Then that has also added to the problem. So we as legislators cannot fold our arms and see,
Chairman Navy.
We cannot see this kind of situation going on and without having intervention. You could recall very well that sometimes back in April 9, 2020, there was this airstrike in Damboa. There was also, you remember, there was some years back, there was also this airstrike in Ran in Borno State, that a lot of civilians were actually killed. So we had to put up legislative intervention, I think in the Head Assembly, and then we put up a committee to go and assess and see why that people who are charged with the responsibility, have they done the right thing before they drop their bombs? Is it according to the rules of engagement? Or was it out of negligence, so that our civilians will actually not be destroyed anyhow? Just like the earlier speaker said, once civilians do not trust you, then it is difficult to even succeed in ending this insurgency. But once the civilians trust the military, for example, when people are going to farms, and then if you have civilians that can protect them, at least go to their farms or protect them when they are taking care of their things, these people will feel happy and they will trust the military. So, and that is why we in the legislature have also been following to ensure that the armed forces, and particularly like me in the military, that they do their things according to the rules of engagement. But if that is not done, we are adding to the problem. So like you also said, that when the enemy is not there, the civilians are also targeted. And truly speaking, we have had allegations, I still say it's allegations, where people feel sometimes that the armed forces and other paramilitary forces have to also attack civilians just to justify the fact that no, they have actually attacked or killed Boko Haram. So these are things we have also talked to the military, and they have tried to convince us that they have done their jobs according to the rules of engagement. So we are very supportive of this particular thing. And I want to say that Center for Civilians Conflict have just mentioned that they were in Nigeria, they came to Nigeria in 2016. That is even the time between 2016 and 2017, to my knowledge, that the government of Nigeria, in collaboration with civil organized groups, have developed that draft particular policy that you have talked about. I agree with you. This will have been the first in Africa. And of course, even the very few in the whole world, because it's not only in Africa. It could have been the very few, because in the entire whole world, this thing is not encouraged. So by doing this, I would be happy to be associated with this policy, that it is in my time that this thing is developed, we support it, and we will write our names to goal, not only in Africa and in the whole of the world. So that is a very good. And I can tell you that the national security strategy document and other laws that it is this policy and draft I'm quite aware of. Now, again, I will also urge civil society organization, ourselves, the members of the parliament, to please put more pressure. And whatever thing you expect us to do, we will require your also advice so that we can be able to put pressure so that this thing is adopted, because I agree that it has been taken there to the FEC meetings on a number of occasions. But now with this COVID, we also have to find out the way of how this thing will be addressed. If we allow it like that, then the people we are serving, particularly the civilians, are at the risk of being killed on a daily basis. If you see what is happening in the Northwest, that in one particular community, 81 people are killed in one day by armed non-state actors, then this is a very terrible matter. And people are even beginning to, we are afraid that one day people will get tired of these killings and then develop a thick skin and come up with a serious crisis that will overpower all of us. How I wish that we put these things into checks that I don't come. Let me not bore you. I want to say, like the first speaker spoke also, not the CISLAC, but Salahuddin. He mentioned that about 40 different operations have been in place. I agree, like in the army, I'm quite aware of the one we talked about, the Operation Lafia Dole. I'm aware of exercises like Ayam, Apamuta 2, Crocodile Smile, Atilogu. All these things have taken place, but they have also been able to be fair to the military. They have been getting results also. They've done their best, because it's not easy to also put their lives on the line, and we say they're not. They are actually doing their best. But the truth is, again, is that each time there is high number of military operations, just be sure then that we are in trouble, because that means there could be more crisis for the civilian. How I wish the number of operations reduces. That means there will be no more attacks, and the civilians will not be caught up in the web of the attacks. Because if military say we want to take care of Boko Haram or other insurgents, and they have been coming up with number of attacks, operations, it is not good for the country, because that means the civilians could be targeted too. So these are the issues, and I will like to allow here to say what other people will say, but I can assure you that in the National Assembly, we have actually done a lot of motions. Chairman of Defense is here, Chairman of Navy is here, and Coco Probole will join us. We have done that to call the armed forces attention so that they can reduce the number of attacks on civilians. We are ready to do that. And if there are any model laws that we can be able to put in place, we'll do that. Thank you so much for your time. I quite appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Namdas. Obviously, each time you take the floor, you always bring very fundamental, key, practical, and of course, political issues to the table. And of course, you have raised quite a number of interesting issues, which I will not want to recap because of time. So I will go straight to Honorable Babajimi Benson, the Chairman, House Committee on Defense, to please give us his own thoughts. Honorable, if you are there, please, the floor is yours, sir. Is honorable close by? If he is not, then we can go to House Committee Chairman on Air Force. Is Honorable Babajimi with us? Okay, so if he's not there, then let me ask if, okay, maybe he has some issues with connection, I guess. Okay, is Honorable Shehu Koko, is he with us here? If he's with us, then we can take him and of course come back to Honorable Babajimi Benson. Honorable Shehu, if you are here, please, you have the floor, sir. Okay, we understand some slight technical issues are happening, but please, if there is someone very close to, please also provide some of this technical support. It will be very good. So if Honorable Koko, Honorable Babajimi Benson are not close by or trying to also sort their technical issues, we have other honorable members in the House. I see Honorable Edim, if he wants to also lend his voice. Sir, I would just request that you just take a shot and of course allow every member in the House to have their voice heard before we come back to those whom we have penciled. Honorable Edim, I'll hand the floor over to you, sir. We need to unmute your mic. Secretariat, is it from your end or from Honorable Edim's?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, yes, I've listened quite well to your presentation and analysis. My take there is one, the policy content is not very, very clear, having in mind that there were various groups that are on ground already before 2016 that should have put these things in place. One, I tell you, critical problems that have arose because of these issues, because of these protection issues. You have the issue of taking care of humans who are affected, who are very, very affected and impacted. You can imagine about 30,000 persons being flushed out. That's quite a number. You also have several millions of persons displaced. I feel that we have various agencies who have been on ground before now that would have taken position of these issues and also energize the immediate adoption of this policy. So I think we really need to work hard, and that goes to now query why a policy, critical policy such as this, protection of civilians in various military operations, cannot be adopted till now, 3-4 years since its kickoff. So I think we really should put our efforts in, and whatever we can do as parliamentarians, whatever pressure, whatever talk, whatever issues we can raise as parliamentarians, it will also help push it. Because I think that when all these persons are harnessed and put together, it will also help the policy to come up. Thank you so much, and I hope I'm okay. I hope I'm on ground.
Yeah, you are on ground, sir. We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. So several other ones. I think as we go ahead, the other 1 or 2 issues we will need to point out. For now, I think that will be my take.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Those were very key, and I'm sure secretariats are very much taking notes of those observations. If Honorable Babajimi is back, is it okay if he also joins? And of course, we hand the floor over to him.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Oh, great. It's great to be here. I must thank the CISLAC team. I must thank the committee chairman on Army, Navy, and Air Force. They've been very patriotic, and I've enjoyed their cooperation and assistance so far in this arduous job of keeping our country safe. I must say that the policy initiative is a step in the right direction. As you all know, we live in very interesting times. The war we're fighting now is not the typical conventional type, it's asymmetric in nature. So which means the civilians are collateral damage. But should we accept that? No. we should find ways of mitigating and ensuring that the civilians are protected. As you're all aware, Nigeria is signatory to various international laws, conventions, and treaties that protect civilians. As lawmakers, we should ensure that those treaties receive legal backing and the civilians are thoroughly well protected against being collateral subjects. So, in my opinion, I listened to the five critical sectors of the policy, and I'm wondering why it should be a policy and not a legal parliamentary initiative. It is always quicker to initiate policies and um, um, policy initiatives through the parliament rather than going through the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, because eventually they're still going to send it to us. So the Security Committee, which I superintend over, can take this as a critical bill. All of us work together. We have various bills we are pursuing together. So it's something that we can also put on our agenda and make it applicable within the shortest possible time. There's a fierce urgency of now. Yeah, so like the previous speaker said, the policy needs to be fleshed out. It needs to be more robust. I didn't really get too much of a hang of it as well. But I know that I had some little nuggets in it that would really add value to the lives of our civilians who live in the way of conflict. So it's great to be here, and I'm going to yield the floor to the other panelists to say something, and I'll wait for the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for those thoughts. And I must confess that you have indeed helped me to earn my salary today, because what you have done largely is to further confirm some of the conversation we are having at the back door within our system. And I know I have discussed this severally with Mr. Tunde to say, look, yes, this is a policy, fantastic, a lot of effort has gone into it. However, we also need to push for a legislation around this, and you have just confirmed that. So I'm sure.
I need to add one or two things as well. That the civilian-military collaboration or relationship, what you're trying to drive, is not noble to Nigeria alone. The U.S. has a separate. They treat it as a force on its own. So what it does again, it prevents civilians from being hurt, because initially cause of conflict is deliberated upon by this civilian military engagement. So I think it's a step in the right direction to go. Sorry for the interjection.
Thank you very much, Honorable. No, I mean, it was okay for you to have also taken those additional thoughts. Okay, so very quickly, Honorable Gadi had his hand up, but because I had first of all mentioned Honorable Shehu Koko, just to find out if Honorable Shehu Koko is ready. If he is, I will yield the floor over to him. Otherwise, we'll go to Honorable Yusuf Gadi. Honorable Koko, are you in the house? Okay, so while we wait for Honorable Shehu, okay, Honorable Shehu, are you there?
Not Honorable Shehu, this is the clerk. He's yet to join the platform.
Okay, sir. Okay, so do we expect, okay, so maybe we'll go to Honorable Yusuf, then of course we'll come back and get the thought from Air Force. Honorable Yusuf, I will yield the floor over to you. Honorable Yusuf is the chairman, House Committee on Navy. Honorable Yusuf, you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be part of this program, which to me, as a representative of the people, is a welcoming development. Welcoming development in the sense that even when we are to talk in the constitutional perspective, the primary responsibility of any parliament is to make laws for order, good governance, and peace. And therefore, the topic of discussion today, which bordered on civilian protection or protection of civilian in various military operations, is apt. There wouldn't have been better moment for us to talk about it other than this. Since the Constitution envisaged those powers on the parliament to ensure that good governance are given to the people, to ensure that peace is among the people. So as a chairman of one of the Armed Forces Committee, which have equal right with all other chairmen of the committee, I want to say that in our responsibility as a 9th National Assembly, vis-a-vis the vision of Mr. Speaker in his own blueprint for the 9th National Assembly, protection of the civilian populace is one of the key parameters, one of the key issues identified by Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila in his own agendas for the 9th National Assembly. And that is why if you look at our commitment, whenever there are issues that has to do with loss of life of civilians in Nigeria, the Armed Forces Committee, the Defense, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, we always call ourselves together, perhaps in some instance, plus the Police Committee and other security and national intelligence, to talk and invite the various security chiefs in an attempt to see that we have reduced to the barest minimum those issues that has to do with fundamental human rights. Engage with other international communities that are willing to assist Nigeria to come out of the problem of armed robbery, kidnapping, Boko Haram, and what have you. They will always tell you that issues of fundamental human rights have always been the issues of most of the international communities that would be willing to come and assist. But to come up with this document today, to revive the document, to inform us of that policy document that hitherto this moment would have been the bedrock of policy formulation, I think in one way or the other, the Center for Civilian in Conflict as well as the CISLAC are stimulating the chairman of various security committees to stand up and ensure that we have provided legal framework that will help in one way or the other toward protection of civilians when it comes to various military operations. As a civilian, I had my reservation for the various military operations. The way you have, because whenever people talk about military operation, it's not only the Army or the Air Force or the Navy, it's a combination of all the armed forces. Go to Maiduguri, you see Air Force there, you see Army there, you see Navy there, because they are trained in land operations too. But the way and manner within which we have proliferation of different military operations, as a civilian, as a Democrat, it doesn't speak well of Nigeria. It means that we are militarizing the society, in my own view. So if some of this policy document, the chairman of respective committee will work up to our own responsibility by ensuring that we have sponsored and financed legislation that in one way or the other will ensure the protection of civilian life and properties. I think that will go a long way in helping Nigeria as a country, in also projecting our image, even to the international community, as being democratic, a just and democratic nation. Again, the number of operations we have and the activities of military that put them together with how it affects the life of civilians, it in one way or the other going contrary to our main national objectives, which is Nigeria is supposed to be a just and egalitarian society, a united, strong, and self-reliant nation, land of bright and full of equal opportunities for all citizens, and what have you. So it bastardized those real pillars that establish Nigeria. So, but it's not too late for us to know some of these documents. We even request to have access to them in terms of maritime security, in terms of land security, in terms of air security, and what have you, so that we can see how we will metamorphose those into action. I appreciate all of us at the risk of sounding immodest on behalf of Chairman of Security Committee. We have come up with other legislation that will ensure funding to the various security organizations. In terms of oversight, we are doing our best to visit all formations in order to equally call their attention where we have reports of issues that has to do with fundamental human rights of the citizens of this country. So definitely, we have our own policy framework to as a committee on armed force. It's not every document, of course, that will come on board that we expect us to adopt it 100%. We are expected to scrutinize those policy documents that was suggested because time changes. A situation, a policy document that would have ordinarily provide solution to 2016 situation and 17. Definitely, the security situation is not static, it's dynamic. You can see some certain adjustment that will require parliament and people participation toward taking into consideration and solving the problem of recent development in terms of perspective of our various security situations.
Thank you very much, Honorable Yusuf. You have indeed raised quite a number of issues, and I must say that I cannot agree less with you. And of course, for us, these are also some of the issues that we are working on from our own end, and we know too well that the Ninth Assembly, arguably, has been the most responsive assembly to revamping the Nigerian Armed Forces since the return to democratic rule in 1999, and that actually must be on the record because we know currently there are two bills in the House. One is the revamping of the Nigerian Armed Forces, which is channeling funding, capacity, capability, and training. And the second is the Defense Management Bill, which also is a very strategic document. And we know too well that protection of civilian legislation might be the next line to go towards ensuring the Ninth Assembly is actually recorded in a very strategic document in the annals of our history. I would go straight to the Air Force Committee. I have seen a number of members from that committee here.
But before then, you have forgotten about one thing. Let me inform you that the House of Representatives had equally passed a bill on community policing. We have adjusted the Police Act. I was the sponsor of that bill. It has been passed by the House of Representatives. The Senate have equally passed that bill. It is at the level of harmonization so that it will be forwarded to Mr. President. I sponsored the bill in the House of Reps. And that bill have equally put into consideration the aspect of community policing so that when communities participate in policing, I think issues of protecting civilian rights in terms of any other operation, be it military or whatever, it is going to definitely add value to ensuring that civilians are safe.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Obviously, we cannot exhaust the number of achievements that this assembly has brought, particularly in terms of security. And of course, honestly, it is something that we recognize constantly. Do we have anyone from the Air Force Committee who wants to make a quick intervention? Air Force Committee. I saw a member from that committee a short while ago. If he's still there, if he has the permission of the chair, he might just want to give us a word. Otherwise, we'll take the clerk of the committee to just give us a short goodwill. Then, of course, we just move on. We want to wrap up and...
Can I say something?
Wrap up?
Can I say something? Yeah, hello.
Hello, hi.
Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you. Good evening, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
Sorry to come at this time. I just came out of meeting. My name is Honorable Muhammad. Hello.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you for joining us. Please, you have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me start by tendering my apology. My name is Honorable Shehu Muhammad, a Chairman House Committee on Air Force. I just came out of a meeting, that's why I just joined now. And I wish everyone of us welcome, and like I said, my apology. After that, please, I hope my apology will be accepted at this hour.
Honorable Show, your apology is duly accepted. Hello? Because you have been very much responsive to your emails. And of course, I saw the enthusiasm in you requesting for the meeting IDs, password, and access. So it shows that you really wanted to be here earlier. But of course, we recognize the exigencies of your offices. So please, your apology is accepted. Because we know too well that you probably don't have grasp of the conversation earlier before now, we would share with all members here with copies of the policy. And of course, we can take the conversation forward probably again in another few weeks so that we can touch base with everyone. I also have you, sir. Honorable, I'm sorry, I'm not getting your name, but I think it would be good if I hear you also give us a thought on this. The Honorable behind glasses, yes, I know we're in Lagos together, and of course, I should forgo my salary for this month for not getting your name, but because you are representing us, you will not put me through that punishment. So please, I would like to get your thoughts before we wrap up, sir.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me now? Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good evening, sir. We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank CISLAC and CIVIC for the efforts they are putting. I want to apologize on behalf of my chairman as well, that he couldn't come early. I wouldn't have spoken before now because I was insisting that he must either speak or ask me to speak. So I listened very carefully. Now, all said, the joy of it is when you speak late, you have the opportunity of having heard us others speak, and then you can just take from what they have said. As the chairman, Ami Nandas has said, what you have spoken about is real, and it's something that is happening to us. And as Chairman Navy has also mentioned, sometimes it is better, Chairman Defense has mentioned, sometimes it's better to come by way of advocacy for legislation. What you have done today has opened our eyes to something that is real, that needs to be done. And I think you would help the system a lot more if you bring this by way of bills that can be activated so that will make the system work better. It is true that some of these things are happening in other parts of the world, and that means that we're not going to do anything that is rocket science. So we can copy and paste where we need to. At this point, I would say we're very willing. My chairman is here already. We're willing to see what you have as policy document or a legal document that we can activate and see how to the system. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I must say that those were very useful. And of course, in the chat room, a number of questions are also going on in there. Secretariats are going to try as much as possible to harmonize all of these. And of course, it goes into the report where we share with you afterwards. So I would want to call on Julius. Julius, if you are there, are you able to quickly tell us what the next steps are? Then, of course, better you get ready to give us a quick vote of thanks. So, Julius, I will pass the ball over to you to just quickly, in a minute, tell us what are the next steps.
Thank you very much, Salaudin. I will stand on existing protocol and say thank you very much to the chairman of the respective House committees. At this juncture, we would like to plead that we don't stop here at this meeting, and we crave the indulgence of the chairman to continue to support and spread the message about the policy importance. We will also want to echo the message by the country director CIVIC, saying that we can't do this alone. We will continue to count on your support as we continue to push for the policy. Thank you very much once more on behalf of the Center for Civilians in Conflict. I'll let Berta give the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. And maybe one thing you also forgot to mention is that we want to make this a more consistent consultation. consistent so that at least we'll keep it in the front burner until we're able to get something that is quite reasonable out of this. I think that would just be the little addition that I want to add to this. So having said that, Beta, my colleague, who also has contributed immensely to making this a success, thank you very much, Beta. So Beta, please, you have the floor. Can you thank every one of us for joining this event? And of course, thank yourself afterwards.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center and the CIVIC Center, I wish to sincerely appreciate every one of us that has taken out from their various tight schedules to partake in this webinar. Honorable Abdurazak Namdas has been very supportive. Honorable Shehu Koko Mohammed, we actually understand your tight schedule. And then we thank Honorable Robert Awondona, who came to stand in the gap for you. Honorable Yusuf Gagdi, Honorable Baba Jimmy Benson, Honorable Edim Umbora, and all other honorables that I have been on their neck insisting that they be part of this meeting. In fact, Honorable Robert said he will not respond to my mails again. So I really appreciate you all. I'm sorry I had to really push for your presence, for you to be here present. I appreciate you all. We have taken into records all that you have pointed out. We're going to tidy everything up, and then I hope that by the next time we'll be knocking on your doors, your doors will be very open for us. I wish us all the best, even as we continue with our day's activities. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much,
thank you.
And thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, please.
Thank you very much. We'll draw the curtain at this point, and we wish you the very best in your agenda for today. Thank you very much. God bless you, and have a very fantastic day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.